guys don't know what RWBY is, it's a series on Rooster Teeth mainly about 4 teenage girls and their adventures in the Academy of Beacon. These 4 girls represent a color that's also an anagram for their names. Ruby Rose, the color of red, Blake Bayodona, the color of black, Yang Xiaolong, the color of yellow. Oh, what the hell, guys? Giving the Asian girl the yellow color? Yeah, real mature, guys. And why the color white. I've watched every single episode of Season 1, and I definitely can't wait to continue watching when Season 2 launches. And to celebrate, I've listed my top 10 RWBY episodes in Season 1. And this is pretty obvious, but if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead. It's free on YouTube, and I recommend watching all its episodes before watching this video in case of spoilers. One last rule. For any episode with a part 1 or 2, I'll be combining those episodes as one segment, meaning I will be talking about every single episode of Season 1. Let's not waste time here. Let's ride the lightning as we count down to the top 10 RWBY episodes. Let's talk about Weiss for a quick second. As of Season 1, she's considered the worst character in the series by many fans. She is arrogant, obnoxious, and thinks she is better than everyone else.
And you thought Weiss was the worst character in the series? You thought wrong.
This piece of non-existing trash is by far the worst character in the series. He's not even well developed. He's just there to be the stereotypical bully of the show. It's been done to death already, knocking books out of people, locking them into lockers, pulling someone's ears out and making fun of them because of their race? What the fuck? Who the hell acts like this? It's one thing to lazily make a bully for the show, but it's another thing to make him as hateable as possible. Yes, Rooster Teeth is very smart for creating a really huge asshole of a character, but that still means we hate the character! I know that objectively, if the show creates a hateable character as an antagonist, then the reaction towards the viewers indicates that we hate the character. Thus, the show should be considered good by comparison, right? Well, think of it like this. If I say I was gonna make an unfunny joke, then proceed to make an unfunny joke, and your action was to boo me off the stage, would that be a good performance? No, it wouldn't! Writers need to realize that just because they make a character hateable, doesn't mean that they're gonna attract attention. At least with Weiss, I can understand why she became so mean. She was pressured by her family to achieve perfection, and was constantly abused by them. This bag has absolutely no excuse. He has no character development to pertain as to why he's such an asshole to Jaune, and even worse, at the end of the episode, Jaune admits to Pierre that he cheated his way into the academy, and guess who was spying on them? That's right, this card. Now, if he was eavesdropping, he would have listened to this portion of the conversation.
Pyrrha, I know I'm going through a hard time right now, but I'm not that depressed. I can always be a farmer or something.
No!
Oh sure, Jaune doesn't think about suicide just yet, and that's fine. But then this douche nozzle pushes him too f***ing far! How is he going to react? How is he going to cheer at his grave? There is absolutely no reason as to why this Justin Bieber wannabe wants to harm such a nice and goofy character. This is easily the worst episode thus far because of how vague it is. There's no reason why this bitchy shitfarts is so damn mean to the point of racism. And at the moment, I felt like this character was the character that's going to kill off one of my favorite characters. I think Nora summed up perfectly what I want to do to Cardin.
We'll break his legs!
Yeah, and then we can knife his stomach wide open so that we can feed him charcoal, and then while we're feeding him charcoal, we'll take the charcoal out of his stomach to feed him that charcoal again! Oh, and then we could like just basically use lemon juice in order to burn his wounded stomach, and then burn him hard with fire! Yeah, gasoline, throw it all the way. Oh, and then lastly, we could like just kick him in the nuts so hard that he barfs out his testicles out of his mouth! God, I have issues!
I'll start off by saying this. Badge and the Burden is probably the most rushed episode. Now, I don't entirely hate this episode, however I do think this is the weakest one just for how cliche it is. I admit, I really like the funny moments, but that doesn't change the fact that this episode has probably made me more frustrated at the animation and the story. The characters are constantly stiff, and when they want to express themselves, it feels more awkward than it does expressive. Aside from RWBY's facial expression, everyone else just seems lazily done. Even Weiss, when she looks very irritated, I still feel like they could have made her more angry. Made her more red or squint her eyes a little more, and there's also this one scene where I definitely think the animator is just doing this on his or her bathroom break. RWBY is left-handed. Why the hell is she holding her pencil on her right hand? Wait a minute, now she's writing it on her left hand in this scene? Why only this scene? Wait a minute, what's with this sound effect? Does that look like the sound effect matches up with the writing at all? At first glance, it may look like the sound effect needs improvement, but in actuality, it's the animation. It's not matching up with what she's writing, like, at all. I honestly think this episode was way too rushed when it was first uploaded, since the animation still needs improvement. But that's just how the animation goes. What about the story and the characters? Well, you already know how Weiss is a bitch already. I know she's always been a bitch, but in previous episodes before this one, and by previous episode I mean the one literally before this one, it's been proven that she's willing to accept the flaws and help her teammates. Instead, she still keeps her ignorant behavior, and she's a complete and total hypocrite. RWBY gave her a good advice as to how to deal with danger, and Weiss did follow that advice, but says that RWBY has done nothing to help her. Hey, Weiss, if you actually listened to what RWBY had said, you would know that she's more of a reliable partner than you'll ever be. RWBY even points this out directly in front of her, and yet she still has this stupid excuse of blaming others for her ignorance. Thankfully, this episode is redeemed at the second part of the episode where she has been lectured at her performance, so don't think I hate this episode entirely. It's a slow start, but once it reaches to its conclusion, I think it's a fantastic moral. It's just that it had a slow beginning is all. And the animation. God damn it, is her hand clipping through the desk? This was the episode when, in the beginning, RWBY fans were excited and pumped up about the show before it premiered by the trailers, and ultimately disliked it after the first episode. People wanted a series about fight scenes and journeys when it's about a schoolgirl arriving in a new school. It's no surprise that almost every anime show starts off with a school scene, and you know what? I would be completely fine with it if it made it good, and for the most part, even though this is third to the bottom of the list, I say this episode is at least average. Yes, there are some things I really want them to change, like replace every single black silhouette character with a placeholder or something, but for the most part, they establish the characters, the side characters, and the premise of the rest of the episodes we'll see later on. RWBY is a new girl who doesn't fit in, but tries her best to make friends, and for the most part, she manages to do so. I understand why this episode draws the fanbase in the hall, but honestly, I at least give this episode a chance. You may not enjoy it, you may enjoy it, but don't let the chance go by for the start of an awesome episode.
Remember your training, Weiss. Head up, shoulders back, right foot forward.
Weiss, that's your left foot. Okay, the Emerald Forest. It's kind of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, there were some epic moments like when Yang gets pissed off at the monsters when they cut a piece of her hair, and then there were ear-grating moments like RWBY and Weiss's relationship. But I had to think of this episode from a different light. These two episodes were focused more on the side characters than the main ones, and I'm perfectly fine with this. Even though this is only the 4th episode in the series, I think that developing the side characters would greatly do for the series. This is the episode I believe shows all the side characters justice. Ren certainly shows his badassness in this episode by taking down 2 yin-yang snakes. Nora, well, didn't give a huge impression on me in this episode, don't worry, we'll talk about that later, does show her sense of humor. Pyrrha and Jaune makes the perfect match, and I really like the whole role reversal. Normally, in, well, anything media related really, it's always the guy that helps out the girl when they're in need of help. In this anime, Pyrrha is the one helping Jaune out. Though honestly, nothing in this episode shows a lot of things I'll remember with the exception of Yang's meltdown. It's another average and mediocre episode. Oh boy, let's talk about Cardin again! Is he still a big fat jackass? Yep. Does he still blackmail Jaune for his own benefits? Yep. Is he still a bigger douchebag than ever? You bet on Yang's sweet tits he is! But you know what? He's kinda redeemed in this episode. I still won't forgive him for the previous episode, but I'd say for certain that Cardin is less obnoxious, and more of a pussy than a bully. That's right, it's Forever Fall, and as of now, my favorite Jaune episode. The episode before this one, RWBY was getting lectured about what it means to be a true leader. With the knowledge she gained, she shares her insight on Jaune. The leader of the group is all about teamwork, sticking by another side instead of caring about yourself. In this episode, an Ursa, which by the way is just a bear, attacks Cardin's group and thus proves that Cardin is a completely shitty leader. His teammates abandoned him, and it was only because of the knowledge Jaune learned to never abandon anyone. So he helps Cardin out instead of abandoning him. And he shows that he is definitely badass by killing the Ursa, by cutting its head off! Decapitation! Cardin then thinks of him as cool, and then they part ways. This episode is really well done to make me love Jaune even more. Though there is one problem that I just can't get my head around. During the Ursa fight, Pyrrha helped Jaune out by using magnetism, and I swear to God, this better not be a plot point. I already hate Cardin as a character. Please don't make him any more hateable than he already is. The only thing I will accept from this scene is if it was a confidence booster for Jaune. That's it. If this scene comes up any time after this episode, trust me, Rooster Teeth, bloodshed will be born. This is where the episode starts kicking off in my opinion, and from here on it's going to get better and better. The story in this episode is getting paired with partners, and to do that, the students have to go to a training ritual. Okay, simple story, not really anything bad going on. When the students get launched off to their helipad, they have to perform their own landing strategy, and oh god, this looks fantastic. The way each character moves, the fluidity, the pace, the speed, it's perfectly matched. And it provides some comedic moments too.
I'm sorry.
This is also, and I know this may be shocking, but this is also the episode where I started to enjoy Weiss's performance.
I know, it's so weird. Like, usually I really despise these types of characters. So why is it that she's the only exception?
It's really simple actually. It's the way the character is presented. Unlike main characters that are designed to be hated completely, she's actually more funnier compared to the likes of Luke from Tales of the Abyss or Joel from The Last of Us. And she may not be the funny type, but scenes with her definitely show the hilarity will ensue if she is in the scene. She may not be my personal favorite character, but I'd say that she's not as bad as everyone says she is. But let's not talk about the main characters. Let's talk about the character thus far that's my favorite side character, Nora. And if I have to compare Nora to anyone, I'd say she's a very comedic Pinkie Pie. I also really like the relationship between Nora and her guy friend, Ren. Nora, to some people, may seem like an annoying little girl, however, Ren just treats her like a regular friend. Seriously, I want her to be my best friend. She seems like the life of the party, and I know what you're saying. In my top 5 best and worst anime cliches, I've specifically stated that I really hate characters that are squealers. So why does Nora get a pass? It's simple really, the voice actress. Samantha Ireland did a really good job at conveying her as this kind of annoying character without making her actually annoying. In my opinion, her funniness balances out the annoying, and it certainly helps that no one in the show complains about how she speaks. Although I hope to God this anime show never gets dubbed into Japanese because I may see her in a different light. Well, whatever, aside from that, this episode is actually really good. Finally, I get to talk about Blake! Okay, so overall, Blake didn't really have much of an impact on me, honestly. She was just there to fill in as the 4th spot of the team. I didn't hate her, but at the same time, she wasn't a really outstanding character. That is until this episode. In this episode, we get to have a hint on a tragic backstory. Blake is pretty much fed up with Weiss's racist remarks against the White Fang. This led to an outbreak from Blake where she reveals that she is one of them. Scared by what her teammates would react, she escapes from the dorm and laments about it outside of the school. There, she symbolically takes off her bow to reveal ears of her true heritage. Not much is really said, but it really puts you on the edge as to what's going to happen in the next episode. So overall, this episode has the best setup for the next story, which is what I can say unlike the John Dice episode.
Okay, calm down, Base. Hopefully this is the last time I have to mention that episode.
This episode also introduces another favorite, Sun. He's a very quirky, lovable Ezio type character. Screws around the popo while doing it with style. And I find it kinda cute at the way he flirts with Blake. This also introduces Penny. a really socially awkward girl who can't comprehend speech. Spoiler, she's a robot.
Oh, come on! It was so obvious! They even show it in the next episode! And besides, I showed you a spoiler warning in this video right here, so why the hell are you complaining?
And yes, I'd probably get shot down if I didn't mention this. It's a combat skirt. I don't know, it's amusing to see Weiss and RWBY agreeing to something, but I personally didn't find it funny. But that aside, this is a great episode and a great lead up to the next one. The first ever episode of RWBY. The beginning of the episode immediately got me hooked into the series, and it starts off with the narration that surprisingly looks like Borderlands. Man has struggles of combat against monsters, and in evolution, eventually overcomes the struggles by inventing a property called dust to defeat monsters, eventually leading to civilization and life as we know it. It also foreshadows the possible of an impending doom at the end of the narration. Something I noticed about the introduction narration is the voice of the woman. It sounds eerily similar to Cortana from Halo. And of course, anything that reminds me of Cortana's voice is a perfect narrator. I'm serious. It matches the mood and the tone of the story, and it fits perfectly well to the plot. Whoever this woman is, she's a very good impersonator. Oh my god. After a couple of minutes of some dude in a suit and his henchmen robbing a store filled with dust, we meet our main protagonist, Ruby Rose. And yes, she can kick some major butt. This is another factor that got me hooked into the series, and it is pretty much the reason why a lot of people enjoy the show so much. The fight scenes. The animation is fantastic when it comes to the fight sequence, and this episode is no exception. The fluidity of RWBY handling her crescent scythe and the rooftop battle between Torchwick and RWBY that is suddenly interrupted by Glinda Goodwitch. This is also, in my opinion, my favorite RWBY episode. Not RWBY as the show, but as in RWBY the character. It certainly shows the character straight out and pulls no punches. She knows how to beat some people up. She's a very energetic girl. She likes cookies. She somehow doesn't gain a single weight after eating those cookies. And she wants to be a hero and become a huntress. This first episode perfectly describes her, and because of this episode, RWBY is certainly one of my favorites. And I feel like I have to discuss about the divide between people who enjoy the show and the people who dislike it. And it seems like all the non-legitimate complaints are from this episode. First off, people keep comparing this to other anime shows and say that this show is nothing special. Some people flat out say that it is a complete ripoff, and the way I see it, yes, it does share some similarities to other anime shows, but why would that be a complaint? It would be nice for an anime show to have some originality, but if you want that, then honestly, I can't really say I would recommend this show to you. But if you're looking for a 3D anime show with some kick-ass action sequence, hilarious moments, and an above-average story, I'd say give at least the next episode a chance. Another complaint I see about this episode is the voice acting, and honestly, I don't see why people hate it so much. Most of these people who seem to hate the voice acting are either A, never liked English dub in the first place, or B, really don't know the difference between good voice acting and bad voice directing. The voice acting is fantastic, especially from a somewhat indie studio. Every character has their own voice that perfectly fits them, especially RWBY with her energetic personality. As a fellow voice actor myself, I would not change a single thing about the voice. I believe it is fine and, dare I say, impressive. And the last complaint I see regarding to the show is the animation. People complain about the cell shading and how it's unrealistic and way too cartoony and yada yada blah blah blah. Are you seriously hating on the animation because it's a cartoon? What, you want this to be like every single military shooter where it's dark and brown? BRB! Make a Legend of Zelda Modern Warfare! This is fantastic animation, and really, if you are complaining about an anime show being an anime show, clearly this is not the demographic for you. Oh yeah, that's another thing people have been debating about. Can you really consider this an anime show? Even though it looks anime and it draws inspiration from anime, because it's made in America, it's automatically not anime. Look, honestly, I think this is a really stupid debate. It's clearly anime-esque, so I believe this is an anime show, regardless of its region. And while we're on the subject here, The Last Airbender and Boondocks are also anime shows. Suck on it, haters! Nah, but seriously, there's a reason why this episode made it so high on the list. It was what it represents. The passion of RWBY fans all over the world defending it, and I just so happen to be one of them. A lot of the hate just comes from this one episode, and while the show clearly has some flaws as I mentioned before, you can't just hate an entire series just because it's not your taste, or just complete judgment for one episode. There's a reason why RWBY is so popular, and you can't deny that. It's the fans who enjoy every single moment of it. And really, why should you rain down on their parade just because you don't agree with them? I'd say you just need to either give a show a chance or ignore it and move on with your life. It's okay to express your opinions, even disliking something, but when it's just bashful and ignorant, that's when your credibility starts to decrease. I learned that the hard way. This episode is well done for a first episode, and it is the perfect episode to start off with a fantastic series. But I'm not done yet. We still got 2 more episodes to talk about. Yeah, I think you know that if I reveal number 2, number 1's gonna be fairly obvious. Well, it can't be helped, and it does ruin the surprise on my number 1 pick, but that's the consequence of talking about every single episode. So just don't think about it too much and enjoy the show. Number 2 is Black and White. This episode has all the aspect that makes a RWBY episode. It has the great fight scenes, the great backstories, and a fantastic, well-developed characters. The fight scenes are just choreographed and certainly flashy as hell. 2 words. Gunchucks! And Penny is certainly a fan favorite with her awesome Xbox knives and Kamehameha! This is certainly the best part of the episode, the fight sequence. It's over the top and pleasure to see in the eyes. This episode further provides backstory for Blake and the White Fang. Blake used to be a member of the White Fang. Originally, the White Fang was an organization that protects the equality between Faunus and humans. While both humans and Faunus are legally treated as equals, humans would usually make fun of the Faunus race. And so the White Fang went on strikes in order to truly exemplify that they do not want to be treated like dirt. However, there was a new leadership in the White Fang, and instead of using picket signs and speeches, they used axes and swords in order to convey violence to those who oppose them. Now this is a twist in the civil rights movement, I do say so myself. Eventually, Blake and Sons investigate the White Fang and finds out that they are working for the criminal organization. Overall, I really do enjoy this episode, and it brings back the narration style that I really like in the first episode. And they create more backstories for both the antagonists of the group and Blake. This is also where Penny, who was just recently introduced, started to become likable. Not only was she a badass robot, but she also has some very funny and quirky lines. Weiss has also improved as her racism for the Faunus appears to be over after some thinking. It truly shows that Team RWBY once again cannot be penetrated due to their trust and teamwork. Heh, he said penetrated.
Shut up!
I couldn't take it, couldn't stand another minute. Couldn't bear another day without you in it. All of the joy that I had known for all my life was stripped away from me the minute that you died. To have you in my life was all I ever wanted, but now without you I'm my soul forever haunted. Can't help but feel that I had taken you for granted. No way in hell that I could never comprehend this.
This episode is the epitome of Wintastic. Now, if I have to be honest, this was more of a biased pick for me. Usually when it comes to episodes, this episode may factually not be the best in the series. There are some obvious flaws like the speed cam, and the fact that RWBY's cape was somehow unsheathed, and the fact that even though everyone's plan was to run away from the monsters for defensive reasons, they still fight against them knowing that that's going against their plans. And yeah, Weiss's change in RWBY was kind of rushed. While she does finally understand and teams up with RWBY, I felt like they could flesh that out more. So why is this episode so high then? There's one reason, and one reason why this episode alone takes my number 1 spot. Is it the story? Well, it's a continuation of some previous episodes, and I felt like they put more time and effort into those stories. It's not bad, but it's not too significant either. Hell, really the only story you could say is at the end where they assign team members and team leaders, so it can't be that. Is it the characters? Well, with the exception of Nora, not a whole lot was shown. We already know every character's personality, and they didn't really build up to that. And like I said with Weiss previously, her change in personality felt too rushed. I'm gonna tell you this right now. Why is it that despite all its obvious flaws, all its constructive criticism, what is the one thing that's always been pleasing to the eyes, constantly well executed, and manages to even gain the attention of RWBY haters? It's the amazing fight scenes. And this fight scene alone is the reason why I love this episode, just to the point where it's my number 1 spot. Let me break it down to you guys. Just listen to the music you're listening to right now. This music is pumped full of energy and determination. And you know me, I love it when I get to see a fight sequence while listening to heavy metal. During the battle, we see a lot of stuff. Aerial dodges from Nora, improv recovery from Blake, and using the whip Indiana Jones style, and picking up some tips from Metal Gear Rising by hacking Slash her way. Team RWBY fights against the big bird called the Nevermore, and Team Juniper fights against a scorpion called the Deathstalker. And this is where the fun begins. Team RWBY fires multiple projectiles, which includes long-range shotguns, sniper shells, automatic pistols, and homing elemental orbs, while escaping to their impeding doom by climbing up several rocks. All 4 girls use different methods in order to recover. They take formation, and RWBY hatches a plan. Why doesn't she say this to the other team members? Who cares? Let's just say gut instincts. Meanwhile, at Team Juniper, all the members are struggling to fight against the Deathstalker. Ren gets flung out of the battle, but that's okay because Jaune of all people manages to get the team back together and finish the fight once and for all. With the Deathstalker down, it's up to Team RWBY to end the fight. Yang, as the brute force she is, shotguns the Nevermore inside its mouth, choking its never-ending bullets. While distracted, crashes into a wall while Weiss freezes its feathers. And remember RWBY's plan? Well, it's freaking convoluted and there's absolutely no way the team could pick it up on RWBY's vague strikes. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it's the best way to end the ridiculous and unrealistic fight. Blake uses her whip in order to slingshot RWBY while Weiss takes aim into the bird. RWBY then shoots multiple sniper shots to build up momentum and speed, sprints the ever-living crap out of the cliffside, and then beheads the bird!
Decapitation!
Yes, it's ridiculous at how these teenagers manages to defeat 2 powerful monsters. But that's its charm. It's over the top and epic. And it made me forget all about the negative sides about this episode. I remember explicitly getting real tired and real bored of the series the first time I watched through it. I laughed at the jokes, sure, but there was absolutely nothing to reel me back into completely loving the show. And the first time I saw this fight scene, it remedied my thoughts previous to the show. This is a fantastic fight scene. It shows 2 different teams showing perfect synergy, and believe it or not, it manages to make Jaune of all people a capable fighter. Yeah, he gets tossed around like a Saints Row ragdoll, but it was him that's giving the commands and the perfect opportunity to attack. And he's the one strategizing along with the combat field. RWBY also makes a crazy but creative tactician, and she manages to do it with style too. There's a reason why RWBY and Jaune were leaders in their team, and it is this fight scene alone. Yes, this episode may not be the best in your eyes, and it may have a lot of faults, but I always go for quality over quantity. And the quality of this scene not only debunks the quantity of the flaws, but this episode skyrockets into my #1 spot for my Season 1 episodes of RWBY. I'm basing 3 and 3, and...
I'm queen of the castle. I'm queen of the castle.
Nora! Oh, silly Nora. That's a rook.
There's a point where it tips, there's a point where it breaks, there's a point where it bends, and a point we just can't take anymore. There's a line that will cross and there's no return. There's a time and a place, no bridges left to burn anymore. We can't just wait with lives to take until they think we're ready. Our enemies are gathering, our storm is blowing down. Now it's time to say goodbye.
Hey, so you should
Yeah,
totally
when are you gonna
do a
post
Let's
that
Play
League of
of
Legends
Flip
Let's
Jackson.
Play
Why
you
the heck
promised?
do you have
Bill,
to
this
cancel
Bioshock Infinite? Look that! We should totally play Zombies Horse Adventures! Sexy hentai! Oh my gosh! I would totally love to see you do it like that way on Barbie's Horse Adventures! Hey yo, this kid needs to play some Halos! Oh my god! Just shut up!